You want to talk about the Steven Crowder situation?
Yeah. So what happened? Conservative media, they're going at it with each other?
Yeah, that's what it seems like.
Interesting. This is a very liberal thing to do.
Yeah.
There's a lot of infighting amongst conservatives.
But
lately.
usually liberals are the ones that like consume their own, right? It's like you can't be liberal enough and eventually everyone cancels each other and it's over. But seeing the right fight like this, the independent right, this is peculiar.
So what it seems like, Steven Crowder was negotiating with the Daily Wire, which Ben Shapiro has an ownership stake in, I assume, and they're close. And he was negotiating, and then some phone call during the negotiations, before they fell apart, Steven Crowder taped that and then put it on this YouTube video and explained, this is why I'm not going with the Daily Wire. Daily Wire might have said something first. This is the link F.A. sent us. And maybe this was his response. And he was like, look, this is why I'm not going with the Daily Wire. Apparently, Ben Shapiro's deals with these people, or Daily Wire's deals with talent is, you have to make videos that YouTube won't demonetize. And that's the only way you get paid. Because if we have to make money off the YouTube money for you to make money off of us. And Steven Crowder's thing is, yeah, but big tech tends to lean left and censor true right-wing views and get demonetized, so you're suppressing freedom of speech. I can't do the deal. That was his line of thought, which makes sense. But then he plays the phone call on the video, and then at the end tries to get people to his, like, whatever thing he's starting. So I think the response in the comments was not what he expected. I think he expected, I'm fighting for the truth, and people are going to see that and be on my side.
Yeah.
But everybody in the comments is like, well, why would you record a phone call with your homie and then put it out there? Like, who does that? And he's just getting...
It was with
Candace Owens went at him, too.
It was at the owner of the Daily Wire named, I think, Jeremy Boring.
Jeremy, yeah. And to his credit, he hasn't turned off comments. I'll give him that. He's letting them cook them.
I thought it was an interesting criticism, though. Well, okay, so I understand, like, kind of where both sides are coming from, right? Which is, you know, I think maybe Crowder was looking for a deal that was probably more similar to, like, Rogan's, which is, hey, I'm going to do what I want to do, and you guys are going to have to deal with the repercussions of those conversations. Like, Rogan gets paid whether or not Spotify gets heat. Spotify wants to take down an episode, like, Rogan getting paid.
Yeah.
And I imagine any creative would want to do that. You know what I mean? I also imagine any creative would want to eventually have that kind of security. It's like, you know, Crowder's probably dealing with every single week whether an episode is demonetized or not, if he's going to get kicked out of YouTube or not, if sponsors are going to leave or not. It's just, there's some stress to that. So the idea that you get to go to a company and you get this guaranteed check after all this hard work and building up this audience, you're like, okay, that's nice. I finally have some security. Maybe I'll take a little less than I can make on my own for the security that I don't have to look over my shoulder every second to see if I'm getting canceled by this, that, or the other. And then finding out that the deal was contingent on the content being up, you go, well, fuck, now I can't just create freely. I'm still dealing with all the stress that I had to deal with before.
Right, yeah.
It ain't a real $50 million deal. It's a $50 million as long as I play by the rules.
And it's a $50 million budget from what he's saying, which is I got to pay 25 employees for
the
however
team.
length of this deal.
Right.
And then,
But what he's also, I imagine, frustrated by, which I also understand, is if I got to play by these rules, and as a conservative, I feel like these rules aren't protecting my values and beliefs, that's not a secure system for me.
Yeah.
I want to be able to create whatever. So in order for me to do that, I have to do that, I guess, on my own platform. I get that. Now, I also understand the Daily Wire's position, which is like, we are assuming the responsibility. We're assuming the liability. We're putting up all the money. We need to make sure that your content still makes us money.
Yeah.
And that's how a business works.
Right.
If you can't make us money, then we're just losing money on this deal. We cannot do that.
Yeah.
Not to mention, I also understand their frustration, which was the first one, none of these deal points were set in stone. This is just like an offer letter. There's another term for it. I'm messing it up. So he could have negotiated on any of these points. And they're like, we could have talked about it. That's where Candace came in, and Candace was like, hey, I got sent a deal memo, and then my lawyers changed these things and added different things and created more securities for me. You could have still done this. It looks like you're kind of almost like using this as an opportunity to create a villain and then galvanize your audience against that villain.
Yeah.
Just one pushback. He did do that though. Like,
what's that?
Like when they gave him the initial terms, he did renegotiate and say, hey, I want their contract to look like this. And then they told him, like, we can't match that.
Well, my
and so then he's like, okay, so I'm going to walk away.
Well, my understanding was what he changed was mostly the money. So they offered something, and then he countered.
The YouTube like thing that he has to
Gotcha.
abide by the YouTube rules. He wanted that
Gotcha.
off the, and
Gotcha.
they were
Here's
like,
what I'll
we
say,
can't
But
do
just
that.
real quick on this, so
Yeah.
and which is good because he should put that up
Yeah.
if it's important to have that. Like if it's important to him to have that kind of creative freedom. The one problem is when you do accept a deal, you're accepting a lack of freedom. Anytime you accept money from somebody else, there's going to be a restriction with that money. So if you are going for a buyout, right, you have to accept, hey, they might take down a piece of content. They might not want to put it up, and that's up to them.
Yeah.
And they're basically putting it on you to create content that won't get taken down by YouTube, which I understand his frustration. What I thought was that Daily Wire was trying to say is, hey, you were okay with this. You weren't upset at this when when you wanted a specific number, and then when you found out that we weren't going to pay you that number, then you were upset. So I think their position was, hey, you're willing to acquiesce to these demands for 100 million or whatever the fuck you wanted, and the second it became this different number, now all of a sudden you can't do it, and you're worried about online censorship and all these
But
kind
why
of
does he
stuff.
have to go public with it anyway? Like, you try to do a deal with someone, the deal doesn't work out. Why is that grounds to all of a sudden, like, put everyone on blast?
And I think that's his mistake. I think, you remember that Tom Brady thing?
But why
that
do
he-
you think?
Well, I'm like more like malicious version is like, oh, this thing happened and I'm going to leverage this thing within the conservative community to like rally people and galvanize people and pull some of their fans away and eat up some of their people. I don't know if he's thinking that way, and it would be a shame if that was the.
But that is
the
how it
goal.
gets perceived. It would be like if CoffeeZilla did the Logan video and then was like, if you want an NFT you can trust, come to me.
Right.
Now,
You'd be like, "Wow."
now what about? Let's use us as an example. You know, we had a deal for a special, and then I publicly said what was going on, right? And that I bought it back, and I was going to put out myself. Like,
Right.
is that the same thing?
I don't think so, because that's necessary for the product. You're explaining to people, hey, here's where it's going to be and here's why it's going to be here. But
No,
for
but
him,
he's
nothing
doing-
changed.
He's doing the same thing.
Why?
He's saying, like, I want to put out a product. They are tying my hands.
Two differences. Sorry to
Well,
interrupt.
let him just get the whole
So
thing
they're
out. and then-
tying my hands, so I can't make the product that I want to make. And so because of this, I want to let the world know that this is the reason why I'm not going with this deal. And he wanted to emphasize, like, oh, so every single person that you sign, even this young YouTuber, you're going to hold their hands as well.
You know, now
I think
what-
that was his major.
But here's the
point.
pushback
Yeah.
from,
What were you
in
saying,
terms of
Akash?
the Andrew
Yeah.
parallel. Andrew didn't say. First of all, he also didn't. He didn't name the streamer, and still hasn't. Didn't
Technically,
record the
neither
comps-
did. I don't think technically neither did Crowder. I think he just called him Big Con.
But
Big-
that phone call where he taped it and then put that's where it's different. People are like, yo, why are you taping phone calls and putting them out and vilifying people? He kind of vilified like streamers, I guess, but he didn't go at anybody. He didn't name any names.
I vilified the
Second,
idea of like censoring.
He
jokes
did,
or
yeah,
censoring
and he
material.
didn't at the end say, by the way, comics, if you want to go to a place that won't censor you, I'm starting a thing. That's where it also gets perceived as this starting to seem more self-serving.
Also,
than
I will say
selfless.
one thing is I had a deal in place, whereas the difference here is they
Also
didn't have
true.
a deal. It'd be one thing if they had a deal in place, they were operating within that deal, and then all this censorship started, and he needed to get out of the deal so that he could create the content that he was promised he could do. Then he would go, hey, this is what happened. But I guess to your point, which is like, you don't even really need to share this at all.
I
You don't
guess
need
that's
to
my
bring it
question.
up.
I wonder if he has a different motivation, or if there's a different like play here. Like with the Chappelle thing with Chappelle shows, like he was leveraging his audience to then get something that he wanted because there was a deal that was in place, and then he was able to leverage his audience to get a better deal. And I'm like, okay, yeah, that's business. But like with this, like you don't just go on blast for every person that you have a deal with that like doesn't go through.
But
like-
do you think that he was leveraging it to build up his Patreon or his private club or whatever it is?
Yeah, I guess.
Feels like maybe that was the goal.
I think the way I perceived it, it was just like he was upset that they tried to make it seem like it's a money thing, because they, I think, came at him. I don't know who came
They
at who
came
first.
back.
Yeah.
He released first.
So he said he like dissed them. They came back trying to make it seem like he was all about the money. That, I think, is what pissed him off, because he's like, no, there's a bigger principle at play, and that's why now I have to record this guy and air that out so you guys see what I actually was caring about on the phone. Because he mentioned that multiple times. He was like, hey, you go.
No, sorry, I was going to say to you. I was going to go ahead and finish up.
Yeah, and so, and that's why at the end of his thing, he was like, oh, well, you guys can go to this platform, and I want to let you know I'm never going to sign anybody. I'm not going to own any of your show. I'm not going to take any money from your YouTube. So it's like, it's almost like, even if he's trying to bring people to this other platform, I don't think he capitalizes
he should
monetarily. I think he's just saying like,
Exactly what I was gonna say.
Producers dancing in the video.
Exactly.
You want to come over
exactly
here?
What, it
What the
felt
fuck was it? Death Row.
Death Row Records. That's exactly what I was gonna say.
but it's also you come here and now you can be yourself.
That feels very Suge Knight's exact point. And then the first part of, oh, they attacked me, so I'm gonna come back. I completely get it. I would probably do the same thing, at the very least want to do the same thing. But Tom Brady, you remember when he commented on Lil Duval's IG post randomly about some meme Duval had, and he said, if you're explaining, you're losing? That's how I felt about watching that. Oh, this is what they mean. If you're explaining, you're losing. If you just ignored it and a couple sentences maybe, and then went on about his business, everybody would have forgotten. When you make this video to explain yourself, then people start to, there's just more time to pick holes in what you're saying.
Maybe he just felt like, nah, they're trying to paint me
I get it.
in a light that I
I
don't
would
like.
have probably done the same.
That makes
You know?
more sense.
Yeah.
But also, don't leave the phone call. That'd be the only thing.
Leaking the phone call's corny. I don't like that.
Corny.
Man.
Yeah.
I don't like that at all.
Yeah.
But it is an interesting thing. Like, you know, one way of looking at it is that he went into this with the because it's not like he hasn't had deals before, right? Like he's taking money from different people. I think he was with the Blaze. I think he's been with other people. So it's not like he's not accepting money from different groups.
Yeah.
I guess he felt that those groups weren't like impeding on his freedom of thought. And he knows for a fact that YouTube or different social media platforms are going to do that. And if he has to maintain the rules of those platforms, now, by proxy of that relationship and that contract, he cannot create freely. That I relate to. And that would be frustrating.
Yeah.
And it'd be frustrating for him to continue to be authentic and serve his viewers.
Yeah, of course.
If he went along with that. I guess I would say is like, why not continue debating that, and why not continue working those things out in the contracts and trying to fight for that? Because especially if I'm taking him at face value in terms of like what his beliefs are, right? Which I like to do with people. It's like, if you're a conservative, you believe the shit, you live, you die. I think a lot of people who are necessarily haters are using this as an opportunity to be like, see, you're not about that life, get the fuck out of here, you're just trying to monetize this. But if you believe in conservative values like a terrorist believes in Islam, like you are 100%, anything that's gonna encroach on that freedom, you like, get the fuck out of here.
And that's what he sounds like to me. But you never know.